What is up, beautiful people of the world? Welcome back to AI and Business Talk. Today's title or today's topic really is where AI and operations really are in 2026. So I have a whole bunch of notes here that I am going to cite. There's a bunch of reports that I went through, and I'm just gonna really talk about operations and AI decisions and all the things, right? So, every headline that we see, it's always saying that AI is changing the way that, we do business, right? But, when I talk to businesses and when I look at what they're doing, I actually, I see the dashboards, I see the pilots, right? Like the stuff that they're trying to do or that they're testing. But I also see all the chaos. And what I don't see is an operation that's ready, right? I see tools that they have, but I don't see a ready operation, right? And I'm going to get into that. Now, if you're a founder, if you are an operator, if you are CEO, COO, or really just somebody always kind of goes to put out the fire, this episode is for you. All right. So, welcome back again to AI and Business Talk. This is where I slow things down and I really connect the dots with what's happening in the world and what it actually means for your operation, for your profit, and for the decisions that you make in your business. Now, I'm your host, Jessica Marie. I am not your average CEO. I'm Latina, born in Manhattan, raised in corporate America, and I have spent over 2 decades in finance and operations. I've managed multi-million dollar portfolios. I fell in love with operations when I stepped into the parking industry, and I actually helped build the operational foundation of a multi-million dollar startup. And so here I am talking about AI and operations. So when I talk about it, it's in my DNA, y'all, and I just love talking about this stuff. So today, what we're going to talk about um, is where AI and operations is here today in 2026, right? So, what is actually happening inside of the organizations and what it really means to run your business. Now, what I would hope is that by the end of this episode, that you walk away with three things. Number one, a clear picture of how AI is actually being used in operations right now. Number two, where decision making and operational readiness are breaking down. And then number three, the questions that you need to ask yourself inside your business before you throw more tools and more money and more AI at it, right? So let's start with the big picture where and we'll talk about data, right? So what the data says about AI adoption, right? Because y'all, I'm a numbers girl if you've been following me, and I'm always going to I'm numbers and facts. So I'm always going to give you the numbers and I'm always going to give you the facts, right? And my sources will be down in the description. Um, but we want to start with the big picture and what the data says about AI adoption and why that doesn't automatically translate into real operational change. Now, depending on which study you look at, most organizations, they will tell you, yes, we are using AI. McKinsey put out a report last year. It was the State of AI survey, and they found that 78% of organizations now use AI in at least one business function, and that's up by from 72% from the prior year. Now, when it comes to generative AI specifically, 71% of organizations regularly use it at least in one business function, and that was up by 65% from the prior year, right? So on paper, this all looks amazing. Like AI adoption is up, budgets are going up. Executives say, yeah, we believe AI will help us grow. It'll help us improve productivity and strengthen customer relationship. That's all good. But when you go a little bit deeper and you look like at the true story behind the numbers, that's when we can really see what's going on. So that same McKinsey report showed that organizations that redesign workflows as they deploy generative AI see the biggest bottom line impact, right? Key words here, redesign workflow, right? 21% have already fundamentally redesigned some workflows, okay? Deloitte this year, State of AI in the Enterprise report says that they call this out directly. And they say that they surveyed over 3,000 executives around the world, and only 25% of leaders say AI is having a transformative effect on their business, and only 30% are actually redesigning key processes around AI. Only 30% are redesigning. Okay, that's not good. They say a big chunk, which is 37%, are only using AI at a surface level without changing the underlying way the business runs. That is not good, y'all. I'll get into it. Let me translate that for you. In plain operational language, most companies are using AI somewhere. Very few have done the real work of rewriting their operations to actually make AI make sense. This is exactly what I see across the board, right? There's an AI powered slide deck, a AI powered dashboard. They got the AI chatbot on their website. But if you walk into the actual operation and you look behind the scenes, you kind of lift the curtain, people are still chasing each other through email. They're still doing stuff manually, like fixing data. They're still working off of like five different versions of a spreadsheet. So when you hear the stats like 78% of companies are using I want you to hold a question in your mind. And I want you to ask, how many have changed how they make decisions and how they run their business around AI? That gap between we bought the tool and then we also changed the way we work, that's where you have the profit leaks. That's where customer trust erodes. That is where bad decisions scale fast. Now, let's talk about that gap, right? That gap between I bought the tool and I changed the way I actually do the thing. Because because that right there is why operations matter more than ever. Over and over again, the research says the same thing. The biggest blockers to getting value from AI are not the models, they're the plumbing. Data quality, integration with legacy systems, messy processes, and unclear ownership. Okay. Those are the biggest blockers. Okay. So, a 2025 article on AI adoption trends highlighted that companies struggle with things like siloed data. So, everything's living on its own everywhere. Lack of integration. So, nothing's talking to each other, and unclear workflows, right? So, when they try to move from pilot project to real production use, there's confusion, right? Because you got everything everywhere. And risk and governance experts have been saying the same thing. Companies are building oversight committees and AI policies, but they still struggle with operational readiness. Y'all, I can't tell you how important operations is. This is why I talk about this stuff all of the time because it's so overlooked. The day-to-day processes and controls needed to actually run AI safely is in the operation. Here's the truth, the hard truth. If your data is inconsistent, if your processes are unclear, if nobody owns the outcome, AI doesn't fix that. It just makes the confusion go faster, right? It just confuses it. Let me give you an example. Imagine a sales team where everyone logs opportunities differently in the CRM, right? Some people update every field, some only change the stage of it, right? Some don't even update anything at all until like they actually make the sale, until they actually close, right? Now, leadership goes and they buy this fancy AI tool that does the forecasting, right? And they put that on top of that data, that incomplete data, right? Suddenly, the AI is giving this super precise numbers that are built on a foundation of garbage, right? You have bad data, you're going to get bad output. It doesn't matter what type of tool you put over it. You got to clean up your data first, okay? That is That's what the reports are talking about when they mention data quality and integration as major risks. If you don't have clean, consistent output, then you're going to get misleading outputs, right? Whether it's a forecast, a risk score, or even a recommendation. Now, let's talk about governance and responsibility because this is where responsible AI stops being a buzzword and it starts being operations work. Y'all, recent reports show more companies standing up some form of AI governance, committees, policy guidelines. Now, a report put out by Deloitte in 2020, this year, actually, for example, it stresses that organizations are trying to move from experimentation to weaving in AI into the fabric of the business workflows. But it also notes that many companies are still only using AI at the surface without redesigning the process around it, right? So we keep hearing this over and over again on different reports. Other research and risk analysis highlight that many organizations still aren't fully prepared for things like bias, explainability, accountability, and AI assisted decisions. They might have a policy on paper, but not the day to day discipline of who approves the use case, who reviews the output, who owns the risk if the model is wrong. And then there's the human side to it, right? Change management and skills. Even when the technology works, many studies list resistance to change, lack of skills, and fuzzy accountability as major obstacles to successful AI adoption. Listen, if your managers don't know how to lead through this and your operations don't know how to work with AI instead of around it, you are going to see shadow workflows. People are going to start exporting data on their own on spreadsheets, right? They're going to start redoing the outputs manually because the data is coming out wrong because the data in there is already wrong, right? And then they're just going to ignore the systems altogether and they're just going to start doing their own thing. And this is where you have invisible profit leaks that will never show up on your slides or anything, right? Because somebody's doing the work. So the profit leak there is, it could be time. It could be something that's missed. It could be a number of things. I've seen operations where AI reporting is beautiful. It looks gorgeous, but the beautiful dashboards, the impressive models, but the floor, like the actual work is running on sticky notes, right? Like sometimes you got Slack messages. I've seen people do WhatsApp messages. Like I've seen people say like, okay, I'm not going to put it in the system. Can you just send me that email real quick? Like, or just send me that report real quick, right? Or get me some numbers real quick. That's where like all of this chaos kind of snowballs, right? So the tech basically in their business is like 2026, but then like the operation is still running in like 2006, right? So like they're still running way behind, right? Because they're still doing things manually, they're still doing things outside of the system. If you aren't doing stuff outside of the system and you're not capturing that data, you're never going to get the full picture of what's going on, right? So stick to the system. So when we talk about AI transformation, we have to be honest. If you haven't cleaned up your process, if you haven't clarified decisions, right? Um, or invested in basic data and governance, AI is going to amplify that mess, right? Like I want to say that over and over again. Now, in the next part of this episode, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into how AI is reshaping decision making and what the research says about the upsides and the risks. And then I'm going to bring it back together, circle back to operations and profit, right? Now, let's zoom in on decisions for a minute because AI is not just about automating tasks, it's about changing how decisions get made inside of your business, right? Like, you want to make sure that the data that you're getting out is going to help you make more, better informed decisions, right? Now, right now, AI is being used to support decisions in a lot of places like forecasting, demand, managing risks, right? Targeting marketing, understanding customer behavior, allocating resources. Like it's giving you all of this information for almost every aspect of your business. One 2024 analysis of AI in business decision making pointed out that AI systems can process and analyze massive amounts of data in real time, which accelerates decision making, right? It helps identify complex patterns and it supports more fact-based decisions. The same kind of research highlights benefits, three big benefits. Number one, speed and efficiency, right? You get faster analysis than a human team could ever do on their own. Number two, the ability to uncover hidden patterns in the data that humans may never notice, right? And then number three, greater accuracy and objectivity when the system is designed well, because it can reduce some types of human bias and emotion in the moment of decision, right? That's the upside, and it's real. When you use AI to scan your customer data, it can spot segments that are quietly churning before any human can actually see it. When you use AI for demand forecasting, it can pick up signals from search, social, and behavior that you would probably never get in a basic spreadsheet. But there's a trap, and this is where leaders get in trouble. The trap is overconfidence, right? If your team doesn't understand how the model works, what data it was trained on, or where it's likely to be wrong, you get blind trust instead of informed judgment, right? You have to know where the data is coming from. Anytime you have, this is something I've done a lot in operations where I've tried to understand what is, anytime I've approached a new application software, right? And I see what it looks like on the surface, I have to understand where the data is coming from. Because when I understand where the data is coming from, then I can determine, is that correct? Because I know where the data is coming from. If that makes sense. For all you data nerds out there, you'll probably understand what I'm saying. Now, some of the research on AI assisted decision making shows this clearly. AI can improve efficiency and accuracy, like we know, but it can also introduce new risks. Things like amplifying existing bias, creating a false sense of certainty, or pushing people to defer the algorithm, even when their expertise says that something's off, right? So that's where that trap of overconfidence comes in, where you're like, okay, well, if the system says it's right, if the AI says it's right, then it's right. But that's not always the case because even before artificial intelligence was here, right, we have humans that pulled reports from systems, right? And we know that if we pulled a report from the system and we saw that the data didn't make sense, it was because the data that was in the system was just incorrect, right? So now what are we doing with artificial intelligence? We have that added extra layer so that it saves us a little bit of time, so that it does the analysis for us, but it doesn't mean that it takes away what we already know. If we already know where the data is coming from, what type of data or what it should look like, then when the AI spits it out, the analysis, then we should be able to make those decisions based on looking at it. So it's like we got to analyze the analysis, basically, is what I'm saying, but definitely at a faster speed, right? So, I think for the most part, we can kind of eyeball the data at this point, right? Now, let me give you an example. Imagine you are an AI model and you're scoring a credit risk or approving customers, right? And if the model wasn't trained on historical data that um, already had bias baked in, who got approved, who didn't, then the AI can learn the pattern and repeat it at scale, right? Now, it's not one person making a biased decision, it's the whole system 24/7, right? But let's take forecasting. If your historical data is noisy, incomplete, or skewed, right, by just like one event, it could be just one event, and you don't account for that, the AI can confidently generate a forecast that looks precise. Yo, we still need humans for this stuff, okay? And this entire episode is based on that. Yes, AI is great. But it's not great if you don't fix your operation. It's not great if you don't add a human element to it. You still need all of it to work together. Now, that forecast would look precise, but directionally it's wrong. That flawed forecast doesn't live in a vacuum. It hits inventory, staffing, logistics, and customer experience, right? So kind of like impacts everything, right? You got bad data, it just impacts everything. Now, there was one 2026 stat roundup. It was from the World Economic Forum, where they noted that organizations estimate about 34% of business tasks are now performed by machines, with the remaining 66% done by humans. So we're not in a fully automated world. We're kind of like in a hybrid world where humans and AI are making the decisions together. And that hybrid is really important. It means that your competitive advantage is not just do you have AI? It's how good are your people, your process, and your data at working with AI, right? Like we have to understand, like we have to get into this mindset that it's not replacing everything that we're doing. It may, right? It can answer phone calls for us. It can kind of triage, right? Like we have AI agents and stuff. But when we get down to the nitty gritty of stuff, y'all, like we have to understand, like we still got to make sure that we're using like our noggin for all of this type of stuff. Now, if we um if we put all this together, the research is basically saying, yes, AI can make your decisions faster, more driven data, and sometimes even more accurate. But without strong operations, clean data, clean processes, real governance, you can just as easily make bad decisions faster at scale and more confident than you ever have. Think about that, y'all. And that's the part I want you to hear as an operator or a leader. AI doesn't replace the need for decision discipline. It raises the bar for it. It raises the bar for it, y'all. So let's bring this all the way back home to your operations and your profit, right? Because that's what it's all about. Because at the end of the day, if this doesn't show up in how you run your business, it's just noise, right? At this point, it's just noise. So I want to give you three questions that every founder, CEO, COO, or operator should be asking before they roll out another AI tool. All right, y'all. So number one, where is my process unclear without AI? Before you roll anything out, pick one process, just one, and map it out from end to end. Who does what, in what order, with which inputs, where does it get stuck or bounce around, and who owns the final outcome? Over and over again, AI adoption research shows that unclear workflows, siloed responsibilities, and poor integration and are some of the biggest reasons AI projects stall or fail to deliver. If your process is not clear without AI, it will not become clear with AI. You're just automating the confusion, and that's can be expensive. Question number two, is my data trustworthy enough to drive decisions? A lot of organizations are finding out the hard way that AI is brutally honest about your data. And if your data is missing, uh, or it's duplicated, or it's inconsistent between systems, or you have full one-off expectations that will show up immediately when you start relying on AI to make or support your decisions. So one of the big themes in AI risk and governance work is that AI doesn't magically create your data integrity. You still need standards, you still need clean handoffs, validation, monitoring. That is not glamorous work. It is boring. All right. But it is the difference between AI that protects your profit and AI that quickly drains it. So when you think about AI readiness, I want you to translate that into boring questions like, are we capturing the right data? Is it complete? Is it consistent across systems? Who's responsible for keeping it clean? Right? And then finally, question number three, who owns the decision and the risk? For every AI assisted decision in your business, there should be a human who actually owns that decision, right? Somebody who knows what the model is good at, where it tends to fail, and when it is time to override it. A lot of responsible AI and governance guidance now emphasizes exactly this, the role of clarity, escalation paths, and the ability to challenge or override AI outputs. So it's not enough to say we have an AI policy. You need to know who does what when AI is wrong. Because if nobody owns the decision, everybody blames the system, right? And when everybody blames the system, your customers, your regulators, and your P&Ls are the ones that pay the price. So let's talk about how this shows up in profit uh, in a practical way. When you ignore this, your profit leaks look like this. You have rework because the AI output was wrong or incomplete. So somebody got to do it all over again, right? Got to rework the whole thing. And then people have to fix it manually, right? You have customer churn because AI driven responses are inconsistent or maybe they're off tone, right? Off brand, whatever. You have delays because your team doesn't trust AI and then they end up doing their own thing on, 17 versions of a spreadsheet. And then in worst case scenarios, maybe you have fines or legal costs because governance and controls weren't, they were an afterthought, really. So when you get this right, the picture looks different. AI will amplify a solid operation. You see better forecasting, more targeted marketing, smoother customer experience, and your team spend less time wrestling data and more time solving actual problems, right? Now, um, there was a 2026 overview that pointed out that a strong majority of businesses that have implemented AI report measurable benefits. Okay. Things like things like efficiency gains, better insights, or improved customer experience. But those benefits are not evenly distributed. They tend to show up where organizations have put in the work on data, process, and governance. Okay. So they put in the work to actually make this like the AI work better for them. So, if you take nothing else away from this episode, take this. AI is not a magic button that you press and you put on top of broken operations, right? It's an amplifier. If your operations are sloppy, your data is messy, and your decisions are reactive, AI will multiply that. But if your operations are disciplined and transparent and human-centered, AI will multiply that instead. So, as a self-taught Latina from New York City, 20 years in finance and operations, managing multi-million dollar portfolios and all the things. The businesses I will tell you that win, and I say this with love, are the ones that don't have the fanciest tools. They're the ones with the cleanest operations and the clearest thinking. So, again, my name is Jessica Marie. This is AI and Business Talk. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Share it with somebody, let them know. Help me spread the word about operations and how important it is to your business. And I will catch you on the next one.